Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have lots of people joining today. So as folks are coming in to the session, I'm Celeste Grutman. I'm here joined with Kishawna Peck today, and we're really excited to be hosting you for this conversation. As you're coming in, please just sign in the chat. Tell us your name, tell us where you're signing in from. It's always wonderful to get to know everybody and see where everyone's coming in from. Also, please feel free to tell us why you're here. Kishawna is full of information and she's always happy to sort of tailor the information that she's going to be giving. So if there is something that might help her, go ahead and share it. But yeah, there's too many folks here today for us to say hello to everyone. But I can see that we have folks signing in and coming in from all over the world, which is wonderful today. So great to meet everyone. Thanks for signing in here. We're going to start in just another minute or two as everyone gets signed in and settled in. All right, so as we're kind of doing a little record keeping, please make sure that as you're posting your questions to post them in the Q&A. We will answer your questions directly from the Q&A. We won't be able to answer any questions from the chat. There's just too many people in the webinar today. It's a little bit too hard to keep track of everything, but feel free to chat along the way. Share your own expertise or experiences with other users on the webinar. That's wonderful and welcome. We are an inclusive environment here today, so please share your positivity with all the other job seekers that we have on the call today. So this webinar series is all about helping you get started in the data field. And if you're just joining in, my name is Celeste Grutman. I'm the CEO here at DataQuest, and I'm joined here with Kishawna Peck. She is the CEO of WomenX in data science, and she is a powerful advocate for anyone who wants to start the career that they want. Specifically, she has spent her career really helping to empower women to get into this field that has really been traditionally a male-dominated field. So in these 5 sessions, we are going to cover everything that you need to prepare for your first data job. We're looking at what skills you need to get started, what it's going to take to build a portfolio, how to craft a resume that stands out, and how to prep for interviews. Our goal is to give you the skills and insights, but also connect you with others on the journey. So you see that there's a ton of people here in the webinar today. We had a lot of attendees in our last webinar. We have several threads going. Kishawna has been sharing a lot of great resources, and she's going to continue to share great resources through this 5 webinar series. And those resources are also a great way to connect with other students, share your experiences, and take this and really action it in your own life. So I hope you take advantage of all of this great free wisdom that Kishawna is sharing with all of us here while she's here. So today's session is going to be all about building your portfolio. If you missed the first webinar, you can review the recording to that, and you can download Kishawna's Winter Arc workbook, which is really a guide to kind of helping you structure and set a goal over the next 3 months for your career and accomplishing that goal. I'm sharing that link right now in the chat. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that recording, that link is there. And you'll see the recording, and then there's links to download her workbook and get a little bit more connected with Kishawna. So let me introduce her just for a moment. As I mentioned before, she's the founder and CEO of Women in Data Science. She's a wonderful advocate for anyone who wants to start the career they want. She's got over 10 years of experience leading data teams and shaping strategies across nonprofits, fintech, and advertising. She's been a true leader in the field. She was the founder of Canada's first conference for women in data, and she's grown a thriving community of over 4,000 members. She's also an established speaker and thought leader known for her work in AI and data literacy. She's recognized and featured in the Globe and Mail, Breakfast Television, CP24, and other prominent media outlets. We're so excited to have her here. And so Kishawna, welcome and thank you for being here. We can't thank you enough for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Celeste. As a review for last week, some of the homework was to complete a skills assessment to understand where you are right now so you can figure out where you want to go. You are also comparing this against open job roles that you were interested in and also brainstorming different data project ideas that will help for our conversation today. So we're going to be focusing on building a data portfolio that stands out. We already went through the quick recap of what we did last week. I'm going to go through portfolio importance, standout components in your portfolio, project selection, and platforms. I'll also be um, looking through the chat to see if there's any questions that come up that maybe can be used for later. But let's start with portfolio importance. So, what I would like you to do is first look from the point of view of the hiring manager. So, as a hiring manager with a high volume of resumes and applications coming through, you don't have a lot of time. So, you have a time constraint. And what I found is when I was looking at a resume, I would only spend between 1 to 2 minutes on a resume. It's probably the first scan to see if anything popped out at me. However, if there was a link to a portfolio, I would be spending around 15 plus minutes going through the portfolio because usually a portfolio is supposed to tell a story. And it also, as a hiring manager, helps me understand if you actually have those skills or not, which is very important in the process. What you put on your resume, like resumes are more what you claim as skills, and the portfolio showcases those skills. So, some of the things that hiring managers look for is your problem solving skills, if how your technical skills are showcased there. So, you can show this through your documentation, how you comment through your code, um, how you explain setbacks you might have had while you were going through the project. So it's not necessarily bad if you had hiccups along the way, but you can comment throughout what you were going through, what you tried, and that kind of shows the problem solving process since no business problem is extremely clear for you to go through. But also, something I'm looking for is business impact. So all of the problems that you have an impact for something or someone or a company. So being able to not just show the technical skills, but also explain what are the benefits of doing this analysis or what were some of the setbacks, being able to have that conversation. And then that's something that we can speak about in the interview as well. Some things I would avoid are the classic projects. So, the projects that everyone seems to use in their portfolio. So, some of the ones that come to mind are like the Titanic dataset. I think some of the other attendees from previous sessions have put commentary about other common data projects that are usually seen, or if there's something that's used with a common data set like the iris data set from the UC depository. So using tutorial copies, so these are if you had a guided project and that's what you used as your portfolio. So that's something to avoid because it's not showcasing your skills, that's just showcasing how easily you can follow instructions. Also, missing context. So, yes, this is a display of your technical skills, but we can't forget that it also is solving a problem. So, providing that context really helps, especially if you chose a problem set that that company wouldn't know about. So, for example, if your data portfolio is focused on marine biology, for example, and the companies that you're applying to don't know anything about that, guiding them through and understanding like how you chose the different features that you chose and what you chose to clean and all of those things, like providing that context helps for the reinterpretation of your project. Another thing is from the hiring manager's point of view, there's a trade-off between experience and being brand new, but you have a portfolio. So when you have a portfolio, it offsets the lack of experience. So if you don't have formal experience, if this is your first role in data, if you're transitioning from another domain, the portfolio helps to explain the fact that you still know what you're doing, regardless of the work experience that you have, and also regardless of the educational experience. Sometimes experiences from boot camps or self directed learning can be put on a lower rank than if you went through a formal program. But if you have a portfolio, that kind of bypasses that because you're showcasing the skills. So for me as a hiring manager, I personally didn't care where you went to school, but I wanted to see that you were actually able to do the work, and the portfolio here is a good way to communicate that. And also remember, your portfolio is your proof. So this is your proof that what you're saying on your resume, that skills section with the technical skills that you listed, that you actually know how to do it. This is your proof. Especially as someone who is entry level, that proof helps level the playing field with you and other data professionals that are more experienced. So here are some standout components that I would look for in a portfolio. So documentation. So this can be shown in your README file. So how you clearly identify the problem statements, how you go through the process of your data project end to end and how you explain it to me. Also the metrics that you use. This could be your selection for your data visualization or anything like that, and also the assumptions that you make before you start the project. So usually it comes with a README file. I'm going to show you an example of a portfolio towards the end of this presentation, but documentation is equally as important as the code and the output of the project. Business acumen is something else. So the type of problem that you decided to choose, is this a problem with adequate amount of data to do what you decided to do? For example, if you're doing something data visualization centric, then you might not need as much data as you would need if it was like a machine learning problem. So deciding if the problem that you decide to solve makes sense for the different technical techniques that you decided to use, and also how you decide to showcase the project throughout. Stakeholder focus. So usually it matters on the type of role that you're doing. So if you were applying for a role that was a data analyst in a marketing department, or if your project is centered around a problem that would be presented to a marketing department, ensuring that you have that stakeholder focus. So if I go back to the marine biology example, if this was something that I had framed that I was doing for a NGO, the way that I'm going to write it is in a way that they would understand it and also centering their needs throughout. So ensuring that there's a stakeholder focus, and then when you're communicating it to me in the interview, then being able to speak to me as someone else who might be extremely external to this problem, but having that stakeholder understanding of who you're talking to in the way that you present the information. Success metrics, so the ones that you chose, and cost benefits. So basically, at the end, if you showed that there was a difference between choosing the route that you chose, or what is the ROI of the analysis that you did? Like, what are the outcomes? The next thing is technical depth. You can't run away from this. So this is the cycle that you used in order to clean your data all the way to the end. So examining how you chose to clean the data, how you validated the data, what are your thoughts around scalability if you were to put this in production. Those are kind of things that you would have to have conversations about throughout the interview. So if you provide a glimpse into how you thought about that in this project, that also would be good, and also how you approach testing. And then lastly, code quality. So is it clean? Can I read your code? Is it easily reproducible? Are you using the best practices here? Thoughtful naming. Are there things that I would be able to easily follow, or have you not renamed your features? The comments are always great, but they need to be meaningful. And also how you dealt with errors. It's fine to show that you were having issues while you're going through the project. And then that's something that you can also show how you troubleshoot as well. So I wouldn't run away from showing the failures as you go through, because that can show the thought process of when you were doing the project, since the hiring manager is not going to be there while you're building it. This is more a story of the journey. So the next is project selection. So you want to choose real world data problems. You want to show end-to-end solutions, dependent on the type of role that you're going for. Um, well, if you chose like a cluster of roles you're going for, that might look different. So for example, if you're a data analyst, what you do in your portfolio would look different than someone who's looking for like a data engineering role. And things you would avoid, we already spoke about it. So the tutorial copies, the overdone data sets, incomplete work. So you want to make sure that your portfolio is finished before you start linking it in your resume, and other places like your LinkedIn profile. Also, the scope, it usually takes 2 to 3 months for you to build out your portfolio. So having clear deliverables about what you're going to have in your portfolio and the impact of what you're examining in your portfolio are really important. And also the skill coverage, you want to show that you know how to clean your data, you know how to, well, first, you know how to acquire your data, so you show where you got it from. You're able to clean your data, you're able to do the analysis, and also if you were doing something machine learning related, you would show that you're doing that as well. And then any visualizations that came along the way your um, through your data observation at the beginning when you were just trying to understand the different features that you have, to like the end project if you're making a dashboard, for example. So some of the main platforms that people use in order to make their data portfolios are GitHub. So they're filled with different repositories. They have detailed READMEs. So this is where your documentation goes, in addition to any other like comments you would have in your code. But the README kind of provides a full journey of what the project is. Like I should be able to read that and understand what the project is and how you were thinking about it. A clean commit history and project description. So I'm going to show you an example so you'll be able to see what it looks like there. And also a personal website is a different platform that you could use. And this is you basically getting a domain and making your own website portfolio. And it would as well have like the project narrative there. It would have visualizations, visual demos, and it can function more as a technical blog. And it always has like an about or a contact section, the same way that in GitHub would have the readmes. So here's an example of a GitHub portfolio. So as you can see on the portfolio at the other side, it has like a bit of a description of who Katie is. It also has information that you can connect through LinkedIn and Medium. And here is the README file. So this README file, it introduces Katie. So it has a bit about what type of work Katie does and what can be found in this portfolio. And then you're welcomed under the project section. It says this is where Katie showcases her projects. And then here are some of the tools that Katie uses. And we're going to see throughout the portfolio that Katie's showcasing that she knows how to use these skills. Something that you want to do is you want to make sure that the skills you're listing in your resume, if they're pertinent to the cluster of jobs that you're applying to, that your portfolio reflects that, because that's going to be an easy way to showcase those skills. Some data hiring processes do require you to do a technical assessment, like a live one or a take home, but this portfolio kind of puts you ahead of the fact that you're already showcasing me that you can do that. So I'll feel more confident going through the hiring cycle with a candidate who I can see the work they've done before. So in Katie's portfolio, we can see when I clicked on the projects section here where it says showcase my projects, I'm led to another README, which provided like the table of contents of these are the type of skills that Katie's showcasing in her portfolio. So data engineering, SQL, Python, Tableau, and also some guides that Katie has. So for example, there's a project under data engineering for Uber Taxi, and these are the tools that Katie used throughout this, and here's a project description. I thought that this was a very clean way to set this up because especially from the hiring side, I'm able to easily see that if I look at this project, these should be the skills that I'm seeing demonstrated, and there's also a quick description of the project. And then if I look at the project specifically, it shows like this general objective, but what was really interesting that I couldn't scroll down for is there's the table of contents for this project specifically. So it shows the data sets that were used, the technologies that was used for this project, the data pipeline architecture, the data modeling, the different steps for the process. So the cleaning and transformation, storage, ETL, analytics, and a dashboard at the end. So this was specifically for this project. So that there's first the readme about yourself and kind of a welcome, and then there is the one with all the projects that are in the file, and then Katie has one for the specific projects. And then here, under the same project, they had different workbooks that I could go through, so I would actually see the code that Katie was using for this project. And then as well in this project, as you saw before, she did mention that there was a visualization and use of Tableau. So here's a PDF of the dashboard that Katie made. So if we go back, Katie said that the tools used here were Python, GCP, and Madge. And then it also had the description here. So somewhere here, it must have said that there was a visualization involved. And as you can see in step 5, there was a dashboard that was supposed to be made for this project. So it's nice that it follows the steps that I mentioned before. And then here is a one that was made just strictly on a personal website. And you can see they have like their section over here, very similar to GitHub. And then they had tagged their different projects with the tools and the skills that they're trying to showcase. And they had like some of their experience there too. So some of the checklist items for your portfolio, which there will be like a full checklist that's sent after this call, is for core projects, showing that you went through the process from like data acquisition all the way to the end project, which could be visualization. So showing your data cleaning steps and also the thought through of why you chose those data cleaning steps. The analysis and visualization, ML or AI implementation, if that's what yours is focused on, and an end-to-end solution. As we mentioned before, you should avoid incomplete projects. So try to find a project that you chose a definite end for it, and that will help in your storytelling for your documentation with your clear, sorry, with your clear problem statement, showing the impact of what you decided to explore in your project, talking through your technical decisions as well at the project level, and future improvements. So sometimes I had found when I was doing a project, I didn't come to this miraculous ending, but what I was able to do is say, if I had more time or if I had more resources, these are the additional things I would do. And that's really important, especially since this is not a real life problem. You might not have all of the resources and money that you would need in order to, for example, like enrich the data set, so that it has less bias or that your evaluation metrics come out a different way. For the technical side, you want to make sure your code is clean, that you show that you test and validated your information, show how you deal with errors when they pop up, and explain like the different performance metrics that you chose. And for presentation, how it's showcased, you can choose GitHub, a personal website. You could also have a link to it or a lead to it from LinkedIn, and also visual demonstrations of what the presentation is, even if it's like a quick clip or something that you can show. But the presentation of your portfolio, especially if you reach the interview stage and you have to speak about it, you might want to like make quick slides that you could talk about it in your interview if it does come up. So now we're at the FAQ section. Celeste, do you mind coming back up so we can get through all these questions?
I will, and there are a lot of them. I'm gonna start with this one because I thought it was good. So where in the resume should the portfolio link be? This is pretty straightforward, but I wouldn't know myself.
For me, I put the link at the top, like under your name. Like if you like, for example, if you as well have your LinkedIn link, it would be around the same place.
Perfect, perfect. When you're looking at the portfolio, are there other certifications or online course certificates that especially stand out, that give entry-level candidates a leg up? Like, so when you're looking at that resume, you say, you've got 2 minutes to catch my attention. Is portfolio the only thing, or what else do they have that they can include?
So I feel like this is touching on our next session where we go on resumes.
Okay, perfect.
However, like the benefit of you having the portfolio is now if I'm a hiring manager that's actually curious about whether or not you have the skills, I'm going to spend more time in your portfolio because it takes time to look at compared to a resume that you're just scanning. So it provides like a stopping moment when you're reading all the resumes to be like, oh, like let me look into that. And it also increases the like stickiness of me being like, oh, well, I really enjoyed going through your project about, I don't know, like dog food or something. So I feel like it increases the different certificates. I feel like I feel like that is something you're gonna have to do your own research on for seeing the like validity and how it's rated in the outside world, because sometimes all the certificates seem the same. So this is a way for you to stand out through the portfolio.
I like that answer, Kishan. I wanted to hear how you answered it. My experience, and I've looked at thousands upon thousands of resumes. I've hired hundreds of people throughout my career. Um, and I'm the same with Kishana. I probably looked at your resume for less than a minute. It's because I get hundreds of them when I'm hiring for a job and I just don't have time. So there needs to be something. I look at cover letters. And I've looked at so many. I know when it's personalized and I know when it's not, and I know when ChatGPT wrote it. And so I've seen a couple of people kind of like, I've applied for hundreds of jobs. I, I'm so proud of you. That's great. You're probably applying for too many. Take the time and create the portfolio that Kashana showed you. Spend the time there and then research the jobs that really fit your passions, your interests, where you can bring something special to the table and write a thoughtful cover letter. Make sure that that portfolio is going to stand out. The certifications all blend in. The degrees all blend in. We have another couple of questions here about, do I need a degree? The answer is sometimes yes, and there are some employers that will, they're not going to look at your resume if you don't have it, but it's not across the board and it's not all the time. So if you don't have a degree, that's okay. And there's plenty of employers that will look at your portfolio, but you do need a portfolio if you don't have a degree, I would say for sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
I would also agree. I feel like when you don't, if you don't have, I personally don't think you need a degree if you are very serious about like your self-directed learning plan. So it's like you can't, like, if you're not going to go the normal route of school, then you need to be serious about your learning plan and make sure you did a portfolio so those gaps fill in, like Celeste mentioned.
how many projects would it be preferable to have in your portfolio? What's your sort of range, Kashana?
I
What
would
would you?
say like 3 to 4.
Okay, perfect. And then like, is there a variety? Like, what's the right mix there?
hmm well, you can choose either to go deep or to go broad. Um, so you could choose like one problem and you're showing it end to end. Um, but I would say when you think about the projects, you want to think about what you're showcasing here. Because if you have two projects that are supposed to show your data visualization skills, it's kind of like what is the difference between them? What are the skills that you're showcasing that are different between them? So I think when you choose the projects, it's less about, oh, I'm showing all of these different ways, but more about how can I, because you need to be able to speak about these in interviews. So I think you can go deep or you can go broad and choose multiple subjects to cover. But either way, you need to be able to speak about them in interviews.
Perfect. Yeah. And then you had mentioned, and I had jotted this down as a note, like not sharing guided projects. So we obviously have a lot of guided projects in the past, at DataQuest. This is a great place to start. These are not the projects to share in your portfolio. There are portfolio projects on DataQuest, and these are great jumping off points to building those custom projects. And we have lots of students who use those and then they bring in additional data sets and really make them their own. Do you have some additional advice on sort of how to think about brainstorming or coming up with ideas for portfolio projects?
I think because it's a project that you're going to be working on for 2 to 3 months, it should be something you're interested about. So this is actually a good opportunity if you have some hobbies or some topic that you're really interested about to see what kind of data is out there for that topic, so that you can also stick to completing the portfolio. One of my past employees for his project, he had made like some form of app that would show the likelihood of like different soccer teams, like who would win. So you would choose like one soccer team versus another, and then it would show like the probability, and then it could show like the history of wins and losses in the past and things like that. So for them, they were really interested in the sport. So when they explained it to me, they were excited about it. And even though I don't know anything about sports, their project was complete enough that I understood the story and understood the inputs and understood the work that went in order to reach the end project, which was that app or widget that they made.
Amazing. Yeah. And we had another student who had asked about getting into sort of uh, the fashion industry, on the data side. So I think that's a really good way to think about that. So as you're building out your portfolio, if there's a specific industry that you're interested in, make sure that you're custom fitting that. There's a question here from Amy. What web platforms do you recommend? I'm assuming that Amy's asking sort of for the personal website.
Mhm.
Do you have some specific web platforms that you recommend for the personal website or just whatever you're comfortable in?
I would say whatever you're comfortable in. I know that I've heard that it's easy to build in like Wix or Squarespace, or one of those pages. There's also websites that like their whole thing is to create portfolio websites. So I would look up those as well. Like they're kind of more like a drag drop feel. So I would look into that in case you don't want to be building a website.
That, that makes sense. That said, I think that GitHub, is a great place for this. I get a lot of GitHub links. I do look at those. It lets me know that you're comfortable already using a technology that's common in the industry. I also look at the grid of how active you've been in GitHub.
Mm,
It's a quick data visualization and it kind of probably it's biased, but it does give me a sense of how active you've been and how serious you are. So it starts to build that up, and it's certainly something that I've looked at and has definitely biased my opinion, positively or negatively. So it's a good place to kind of build that recognition. Um, the let's see.
With those that have raised hands, Celeste, do they also have questions in the chat?
If you have a raised hand, it's going to be hard for us to take some live questions. I would say definitely put your questions here in the chat because we have a ton of them and I don't know that we're going to get through all of them. So yes, if you have a raised hand, go ahead and put your questions in the chat for us, please. We have a question here. I think this is interesting. So from Joy. Joy's doing a hobby project that doesn't have a lot of existing data. They've been toying around with the idea of creating a survey to get their own data. Is this a good or bad idea?
Um, I think it depends. So depends on like the goal of the size of your data set and how quickly you think you could get those responses from the survey side. I know that like there's many different data collection methods, and if it's that you have to like data collection can be like expensive and time consuming as well. So you kind of need to do a cost benefit analysis of like what is the time cost and how many responses would I need in order for this to make sense for me to do the data collection side, especially if it's that you're trying to showcase your first data project in your portfolio? Like, do you have other projects that don't require you to do data collection? Because it does showcase that you did think about how you would collect that data, which is something I would expect in the documentation.
Perfect. Sorry, I was running out of power. I had to run and grab my charger.
Okay.
The Let's see. Is having a completion date important for projects in your portfolio? Why or why not? Would you want
Um,
to do?
I would say no. I don't think it's important unless there's like a reasoning, like unless it was like you put the date to show that like the data is based off of like this time bound. So it might have changed, like the responses or the output might have changed. Um, but your portfolio is kind of supposed to be evergreen. So I would hope over time that you're still able to show like the advancement of your skills through different projects. So I don't necessarily think a timestamp is necessary. Like I wouldn't necessarily look out for it. What about you, Celeste?
Um, I think that it can give a sense of longevity, but I would find other ways to signal your seriousness and kind of your commitment to this work. So being active in a community and like sort of having a way to share links to discussions or articles that you've written there. That GitHub grid, like I said, I know it's biased me and I know I look at that. So if I see somebody that's really active, I'm definitely like, okay, this person is, they're working, and I want to work with people who are working. So those things I think you can start to signal and you have minutes. So you want to do everything that you can to kind of stand out.
Mhm.
Um, we have a question here. They say, I don't have a website. Can my LinkedIn work for me? I'm having issues starting my first contract. So LinkedIn versus a portfolio. What's your thought there?
I would say portfolio over LinkedIn. So I feel like LinkedIn is like another version of your resume almost. Um, and like you can provide some like previews into the project that you've done. Um, but I would much prefer to receive your GitHub link and see like a full project than it be on LinkedIn. Celeste, have you seen it done on LinkedIn properly that you would recommend it?
I'd say if you're super active on LinkedIn and you've written articles and you've shared and you've built a community and you can really showcase that to an employer, depending on the job that you're applying for and the employer you're trying to get in with, that can be good. But you need to be super active, right? So you need to have a ton of recommendations then. You need to be writing articles and sharing those. You need to have a larger network and you need to be showcasing that you're using that tool. And that starts to, especially if you're younger or don't have a lot of job experience, what
Mm,
that's showing an employer is that you understand the business world, you understand how to build a network, you understand how to collaborate and kind of grow relationships with people, which is a big skill that employers are looking for in younger or newer team members that they don't always find. So LinkedIn can be a good way to showcase that. But what Kishawna is telling you here, like, don't second guess her. You have 2 minutes to make an impression and you can apply for 100 jobs, or you can spend a couple of months building a great portfolio, doing some work that you probably really love doing, and you can apply for a lot fewer and get noticed. So this is how you're going to get noticed. And it's going to be work, but it will pay off.
and I would also say on the LinkedIn side, especially if you're entry level or you're transitioning and you don't have a lot of data experience, bringing me back to your LinkedIn that reminds me of that. Um, like you would have to have all the things Celeste spoke about before, like the blogs, the network, and all of the things like that. I feel like the portfolio, not like it makes people forget about your resume, but it reminds them that you actually have the skills.
It's yeah, it takes the focus off of your freshness and onto the skills, and that's what you're trying to showcase here.
Mhm.
The somebody's asking, what's the scope of a project compared to the DQ guided projects, for example? So, and Kishana's, you're somewhat familiar with the projects on DataQuest, but talk about that scope. Like, what should the size of this thing be?
Um, it matters on how you decided to show like the project from end to end. So of course you'd have something about the data that you decided to collect, and kind of your like exploration of the data. But the project shouldn't stop at exploratory analysis. It should go a step further and either have like some form of analysis or some form of machine learning problem that it was trying to solve. And then you could have a visualization at the end if you're trying to showcase something. But it should basically show like from the beginning when you collected the data to like the outcomes, whether that's a dashboard or if you're doing like a machine learning project that's supposed to like detect something, like your results of that, and showing your evaluation metrics. Like it the scope, I think for me, I think about it like it needs to have a beginning and it has to have like a definite end.
So you had kind of used a benchmark of this is 2 to 3 months of, regular work on something to build this whole portfolio that might be 3 to 4 projects.
Hmm.
So this is a pretty big scope thing that you're putting together. And you're thinking, especially if you're not bringing a degree to the table or you're not bringing experience, you are going up against candidates who are coming with master's degrees or PhDs. And in some instances, not always for entry level positions, but this is what's going to help you stand out there. So you want to put that time and effort in. So with the guided projects on DataQuest, that's teaching you how to do this, and it's teaching you the formatting, how to put this together. So that's going to give you everything you need to put together this beautiful project. Don't put those in your portfolio, though. There are portfolio projects on DataQuest. You can use those as a jumping off point, but then you're going to want to bring in some additional data sets and make those your own. When you get lost, this is a great place to then take that project, post it in the DataQuest community, share it with other learners, and they'll give you feedback and they'll help you make it better. And it's a great moment in time to kind of leverage the community. And we have had students get noticed even there with their projects, especially if they're good ones.
And you can also like you can start adding the link to your portfolio once you have one solid project there, and then as you continue to add the other projects, it'll update. So it's not that
Um,
you need to wait to apply to jobs till you have all four that are there, but you need to have at least one. And the gut check you do is, am I showcasing the skills that are in my resume?
That's really great advice. Okay, so we have a question on the interview process. Which webinar in the series is going to be the interview webinar?
Why? I think that's the second to last one.
Okay, so
So
that's in
number two. So I think
2
it's four.
weeks.
Yeah, I think that would be in 2 weeks.
Okay, so yeah, there's a few questions on interviewing. We'll save those, but if you have questions on interviewing, come in 2 weeks, and you'll get everything that you need to know there. So here's a question. It says, I'm not sure GitHub activity is a good measure. Many projects are done locally and not shared. Because if you know GitHub, then you are ready to be a good employee. It's true. And so it's not a disqualifier if I don't see that you're active in GitHub. But when I do see profiles that are very active, I know that they're doing a lot of work. I know they're doing a lot of projects. So you're absolutely right, Damien. And it's not that I disqualify somebody if I don't see that. It's just that it gives them maybe a few extra points. When I do see that, I definitely maybe take a second look. There will be a recording available. I see a few questions about that. We have a question about any thoughts on using Kaggle for. I'm not sure if you're asking about like doing competitions or using so the Kaggle projects and data sets for your portfolio. Why don't you answer that in both ways, Kishawna?
Um, so the Kaggle data sets, I'm pretty sure there's something on Kaggle. I'm trying to remember my brain where you can see like how many times a data set has been downloaded. And I think you can also see the type of projects that have been made from a data set. So if I was using a data set from Kaggle, I would just try to make sure that it's not a commonly used data set. It's not a data set where the hiring manager would be able to look and find a project similar to mine because I'm trying to show uniqueness and that I didn't go through a guided project. So that would be just one of the cautions I would have with using Kaggle data sets. I'm not sure if they also have a portfolio offering or template or something like that. But I haven't seen one of those. I've mainly just seen personal websites and GitHubs. But if it has the same functionality to showcase your portfolio, then by all means you can use that.
Um, and then definitely on the competition side, it can be a great way either to network or to kind of showcase your skills to an employer if you do enter those competitions. Let's see. Do you feel like being active on GitHub is more useful than being active on other development platforms?
The activity on GitHub is all you Celeste because I've never looked at that.
Yeah, I feel like I brought us down in a rabbit hole. So yeah, to like clarify, this isn't going to bias me against you if I don't see it. It's really just like if I do see it, I like it. It piques my interest. So yeah, let's not put too much stock here. It's just if you are active on GitHub, and I do happen to notice that, it might catch my attention, and it might make me take a second look, or it might keep your resume in my hands a little bit longer. So really, and I probably was already looking at your resume because you probably already have experience because you've been doing a lot of work, and that's why you're showing up all green. So, and the same thing I think with the timestamps in the portfolios. If I've seen that you're really active and you're doing a lot, whether it's you're really active in communities like Kishawna's, or you do a lot of networking, you go to a lot of conferences, and that shows up in your portfolio or on your resume, it's certainly going to pique my interest. Then in the same way that those kinds of things might pique in the interest of a college admissions advisor. So the that's where I think timestamps and like kind of showing what you're up to right now, whether it's in a cover letter or how do you showcase that in your portfolio can be interesting, and it can be a way to kind of keep that door open for another minute, so that your resume doesn't get overlooked.
And mentioning about timestamps, you do want to set up a cadence, maybe twice a year, once a year, where you do review your portfolio to make sure that it's still up to date, or if there's an additional project that you want to add, if any of your documentation is no longer relevant, um, making sure like the links still work, you'd want to do that check at least once a year.
Um, um, There are a few folks who are asking about work permits and things like that. Kishawna and I, this isn't a great place for us to be able to answer questions about that. I'd say if you're looking just for some initial experience, maybe trying sites like Upwork just to start to kind of build some work experience can be a good place to start, especially if you're looking for work visas and things like that. So that might be a good place for you to build a relationship with a couple of employers. That we've certainly brought folks on through Upwork, and then they've become full-time employees, especially from different places. So that can be a good place to kind of establish that, but I'm not an employment lawyer to be able to answer those questions super well here. I apologize for that. Um, let's see. We have a lot of questions on kind of data sets and data sources.
Mhm.
Um, when you're sitting down to kind of brainstorm a project idea, what are some of your go-tos, or how do you maybe start thinking about that, Kishana?
With the data sets, I try to think of if there's anyone else who might be adjacent to this problem that might have solved it. There's a lot of researchers that have researched a variety of things, and sometimes they allow you to see which data sets they use, like through their papers. There's also, I know in Canada, there's like an open data mandate with some of the different like government bodies. So they'll have open data that you could use. If it's like not for profit that has open data, you could use theirs. If it's open data that a company provides, for example, I think like Spotify has something where you can download data from them. So it's more like trying, your problem. So it's like researching your problem, who's already spoken about your problem to give you ideas of where you could look for the data.
Oh, wonderful. Then we talked a little bit more about, the closer you can align that to the industry that you're looking. So thinking about sort of niching down a little bit, and then aligning your project, it's not going to hurt you. So making this really, really easy for somebody to kind of understand and think, oh, this person belongs here is always a good strategy. The So we have a question. So for a data analyst versus a data scientist, what are kind of some of the differences that you might see in those end-to-end projects?
I would think I think it would be all the same, like the data cleaning portions, probably up into like what the objective is of the project. So with a data science project, I would more expect that there's some machine learning techniques that are being used. Meanwhile, on a data analytics project, I'm expecting more time used in like exploratory analysis. Um, and like dashboarding, visualization, and analysis. So those would be the differences that I would be expecting to see.
Okay, perfect. I do have somebody asking how to sign up for the next webinars. So if you've signed up for this webinar, you're actually signed up for all of them, and you will get the notifications for the next one. So no worries there. Um, the Somebody's asking, if you don't know where to start in self-learning, would you recommend boot camps, postgraduate certificates? Where would you recommend to
I
start?
would recommend what costs the least in terms of time and money because you also don't want to start something that is prohibitively expensive or you don't have the time to commit to it. So with, for example, with DataQuest, even if you're not signed up yet, I think there's some like free paths or courses that you could take um, to be able to see if you even like this to continue and then to commit to a learning path. That's what I would suggest. And DataQuest did not tell me to do that, but if you're unsure and you're at the beginning, that's what I would do.
Thank you. Let's see. I have a question about optimizing your portfolio. Like how do you go about sort of making your projects better? What's your approach to sort of like, I guess, refining and revising?
hmm so I think that comes back to there was a section during documentation where I spoke about like future considerations. So basically what you would do if you had more time, or if you had more resources. So I would go back to what you said would be better for a future recommendation, and then decide if it makes sense to build upon that. So it would have been something that you thought about or might have come up to you in your first round of making that project. I would just revisit it if I'm looking to optimize the depth of the project.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I'll just kind of reiterate, this is a great opportunity to leverage the DataQuest community and get feedback for your projects. There are tons of folks there that are happy to network and kind of provide that feedback that can really give you some ideas on what to do next. We have a question about standing out as a mature worker. We've all heard about age bias in the tech industry. As you're doing your career coaching, Kishawna, and working with your clients, how do you help some of your more mature clients kind of get past that when they're maybe even interviewing somebody who's younger than them?
I would start with um, I would start with like the value proposition that you have because you do have former experience, and especially if you're applying to something that's at the intersection of your domain experience and data and AI, it's like you bring that knowledge with you. But if you did choose an industry that's different than the one you're coming from to apply your data skills, there's also those cross-functional skills that you can bring from that experience there. So I would make sure that you do like a full evaluation, like through probably the skills assessment you did before, and writing down some of the key skills that you know that you have from your experience, and being able to communicate those through the interview because your age should definitely not be seen as a deficit. Um, and one way to ensure that you don't feel that way is to take stock of your track record that you've had. Um, and I would say during the interviews, like the ways that I've always seen an interview is I'm trying to convince the hiring manager that like this would be a good partnership working together. So I would go about it the same way. It's just showing how you could add value there. Um, and basically like even the fact that you're transitioning careers shows your adaptability, your willingness to learn, and those are key skills that you need within any data profession.
That's wonderful advice. Um, the So I'm not sure if I understand this question, but I'm going to ask you, Kishana, because maybe you do. The Would you recommend prepping a full project portfolio or short problem solving tools? Does that resonate with you? And if you're the student who asked this question, maybe just give us some more context and then we'll come back to it if Kishana is not sure of the answer here.
I'm not sure of the answer here.
Okay. So,
Because it also like it matters on the scope that you decided for your projects, right? So then what do you mean by a quick problem?
Yeah, I wasn't sure either. So yeah, so if that's your question, please give us a little bit more context. We'll try to come back there. We have a student asking if there is a platform where you can do projects as an internship. Um, I have one I can recommend, but I am curious if you know any resources, Kishana.
The only one I can think of is Ripen.
Okay.
And I think that's for students doing different challenges. Um, no, but that's the only
Okay.
one I can think of.
Well, so there is Kaggle. That's not exactly an internship, but you can do competitions. It is a great place, like I said, to network. It can get you sort of recognized for your work. It's how Vic actually got started in the data industry. So a great place to start there. And then there is an organization called Omdena. It's OMDENA, and they are a nonprofit. And you can sign up to work on data projects for them to support other nonprofits. And this is also a great way to kind of showcase some of your skills. So you can look into that organization.
Hmm.
Um,
One of the cautions I would have if you were using like something from like your internship or like some work you did on Upwork as a part of your portfolio is like there may be some data privacy issues around like the company that you're working with. So ensuring that if you do decide to showcase work that you did for another company or organization that you do have the sign off to be able to do that.
um, Perfect, perfect, thank you. All right, well, so we're right here on time and I'm seeing the questions kind of slow down. Thank you for typing that, Dana, out. If you have some additional questions, Kishana, do you want to share your email address in the chat? Or you're gonna get a follow-up email. We have a community thread going where you can post questions as well. And then you can also email us. So there's lots of places that you can get help. We're here to help. And then Kishana is sharing her resources. So there's the link to the ARC workbook. If you haven't taken advantage of that resource yet, you can still do that. So definitely go through that guide, do that skills assessment. This week she's sending out her checklist for the portfolio and some links to those project examples. You can also sign up for her newsletter, correct, Kishana? And that link is in the email, the follow-up email that we'll be sending a little bit later today to get her resources about her networks and her the coaching that she does, which is outside of DataQuest, but she's been a long-term partner and we're always really excited to send people her way when they need that extra help. So, and then why don't you just send us off with a little bit of preview for next week, Kishana?
Yeah. So next week we're going to be working on going through your resumes, the do's and don'ts, which I'm really excited about because this is something that you can action quickly after the call. So we'll be going through the do's and don'ts of resumes, how you want to showcase it. I will go back to how you would show the portfolio on your resume, and some key skills that should show up there. I'm also going to see if I can find any information about do's and don'ts for the applicant tracking systems, because sometimes those are the first layer of filtering you out of opportunities for roles.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, everyone, thank you for your time today and look out for those emails and we'll see you back here next week. And Kishana, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I hope you guys have a great day.